Another prominent feature of my Savage Axis builds is the bolt knob that I put on after I do my home threading job on the bolt handle. They start out as one of these, very cheap, about $1.40 from McMaster Carr. It's phenolic resin with a brass insert. The diameter is 1 1/8 inch, and the length is about 1.5 inches. I've tried one of these right on a bolt handle, and it's quite big. It's actually very difficult to get it so that it doesn't interfere with the objective bell of the scope. But as you can see here, I've got them trimmed down. The one here on Taxis, the Taxis project, has been checkered or partially checkered by me. This one here on Maxis has been faceted and sort of polished. And the one over here on the unnamed rifle has just been profiled and then rough finished. But I'm going to show you how to transform one of these that you can get for, like I said, about $1.40 into something that works on your Axis rifle. Before I start talking about the tools I'll be using, I should talk about the material of the bolt knob that we'll be working with. As I mentioned before, it's got a brass insert. That's what actually is threaded, so you're not worried about the plastic stripping out under stress. But the plastic itself is a phenolic resin. Phenolic is a fairly strong material. It's a thermosetting resin, which means that once it gets hot, it doesn't get soft. It starts to burn at much higher temperatures, typically than thermoplastics do. One problem with it is that it's formaldehyde based, which means if you're starting to cut pieces off of it, you're going to be at risk of exposure to some very bad chemicals. So a respirator is going to be a must when you're working with this stuff. Right now I've only got P100 filters on for particles. When I start working with this, I'm going to be putting on my multi-gas filter as well. And make sure your multi-gas filter is suitable for formaldehyde. I'll also be working with goggles because I'll be working with power tools. This should be simple stuff that I wouldn't have to tell anybody, but I'm going to say it anyway just because formaldehyde is just such a nasty chemical to get in your lungs. That being said, however, it does work. I'm not sure if this is paper grade, either grade X or XX, or if it's just pure phenolic resin. I can't imagine that it's not reinforced with something, and paper seems the most likely candidate. It works very easily, a lot like a hard wood. You can use wood rasp, metalworking file, sandpaper. I prefer like a steer-rated or open coat sandpaper when working with this plastic. A sanding drum chucked up in a drill works really well to make some interesting shapes. You can also, if you're feeling fancy, checker it. And this is my checkering kit that I use with my Taxis bolt handle. The checkering's not very good because I'm not very good at checkering, but it's a really attractive way to put some extra texture on there. I presume you could also sandblast it. I don't have blasting equipment, so I can't say for sure. But moving right along, another specialized tool that I've devised, and this is not something that's going to be unfamiliar to most people, is just a piece of 5/16 I believe 18 bolt with the head cut off and a lock nut in place. This is sort of the poor man's lathe. Screws into the threaded insert, locks in with the hex nut. You can chuck this, the shank portion, in your drill and spin it against a belt grinder or belt sander to take down the diameter in a very concentric way. It's very handy. I've used it on almost all of the bolt handles I've made so far with this, and it's also good for locking in your vise. If you lock the shank in your vise, to get a good firm grip on it if you're going to start checkering or using any other sort of file work. Okay, here's the finished project. It's about 2/3 of an ounce the way it is right now. As you can see, I've got a nice hourglass figure carved into it using my belt grinder. Probably took all of 10 minutes for me to do. This is using a 1.5 horse power belt grinder with a 36 grit belt. So if you're using something with less oomph behind it, or just a static block of sandpaper, it's going to take a bit longer. But it's about 2/3 of an ounce right now compared to 1 ounce, which is what the full-size knob, as it comes from McMaster Carr, will weigh. This is one where I've just knocked down the sheen with some Scotch-Brite. There we go. But it fits perfectly on a bolt handle that I've threaded at home. McMaster Carr also offers some other bolt knobs that they aren't bolt knobs specifically, but can be used for this purpose. Along with phenolic, they also have steel and brass spherical ones, as well as polypropylene, or not, excuse me, they do have polypropylene spheres. This is a phenolic sphere. I'd hazard against the polypropylene ones though, because it's a thermoplastic. It's a bit harder to work with. I also feel it's not as strong. If you have a really bad bolt lift, they also have some really long tapered ones. It gives you a lot of room to work with down below the insert. As long as it's got the brass insert or steel insert, it should be fine for this application. I wouldn't use one that's solid phenolic. As long as it's got some sort of metal insert to hold for the threads, it should be strong enough for our purposes. If you have any questions, just let me know, and thanks for watching.